Welcome to the Maine Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics COVID Conversations video series. In this series, we will speak with dietitians around the state of Maine who practice in a variety of settings, focusing the conversation on how the COVID-19 pandemic has both positively and negatively impacted their work.
My name is Mary Emerson. I am the food service director for the Westbrook School nutrition program. And I'm actually a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian for 30 years. I worked 10 years in medical hospitals, and then I worked 10 years in behavioral health hospitals. And I found a calling to work in school nutrition. It was after working in a behavioral health hospital, working with one ward of young children and then two wards of adolescents, and really enjoying working with the kids and really being able to teach them about food and how important food is, not only for their growth, but also in their daily lives and just simply for their brain functions and cognition and learning and all the good things that the brain can do for us. So I really found my calling when I entered school nutrition 15 years ago. This is my 15th year now in school.
Wow.
So I've been doing it for quite a while now. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about how COVID has affected the schools. And specifically in Westbrook, just to give you a little background on Westbrook. It's a suburb of Portland, and we have about 2,500 students. We're at 60% free and reduced. We have, a wide variety of populations in Westbrook. We have a very large immigrant community. About 20% of our students identify as English as a second language. And so that's one of our challenges in school nutrition, is that a lot of our students are not used to American foods per se. So that's one of the challenges that we're working through. And I'll go on to talk about that a little bit later. But when the pandemic struck, it struck on March 16th was our first day of serving. It was a Monday, March 16th. And the 13th was a teacher workshop day where they kind of prepared themselves for what was coming. And we're going to be taking 2 weeks off and everything. We're going to do distant learning. And so that was that workshop day. So we kind of knew that was coming, but we certainly didn't know the whole road that we were in for. So on the 13th was the teacher learning day. And then the 14th, I found out that we were going to definitely will be remote for 2 weeks. So we were making plans that day. And then the 13th, the 15th was a Sunday. And we spent the morning as food service directors on a video call with Walter Beasley, who's the director of child nutrition, and anyone who's in Augusta certainly knows Walter. He's a very memorable. So we spent the morning, doing our plans and finding out that we could go into what we call the summer food service program. The summer food service program is a little bit different than the National School Lunch program that we run during the year, and it's a little bit more flexible. So we were going to be entering into that. And the rest of the day on Sunday, I spent the whole day making plans, getting everything ready to go so that we could feed the kids and we could deliver food to the children. So as well as distribute meals at the schools to kids. So that's when the whole thing started, was March 16th for us. So we're almost up to a year now.
Yeah,
And,
I think it's really fascinating that people forget that how important school lunch is to so many families, because it's 2 meals a day that kids wouldn't usually get, and we have to get that food to them some way somehow. And so everybody eats every day, and so nobody can really take a vacation when a pandemic hits, right?
Exactly. And then the pandemic is kind of different because you're not supposed to be going out.
Right.
Food. You're not supposed to be seeing someone else or sharing food with another family per se. You're supposed to be creating your bubbles to stay in your bubbles with that. And it's especially of concern in districts that are greater than 50% free and reduced. But one of the things that this program, the summer food service program, typically those are the families that the program addresses is districts that have more than 50% free or reduced. But when this pandemic hit, they actually made waivers for all districts to be eligible for the program so that all children can eat for free.
So I was going to ask you about that because as a parent of students in RSU 21, which is Kennebunkport and Arundel, we were getting notices coming home to us that our kids could participate, and that if we wanted to put our name down for a meal slot, we could get our kids meals each day. And I just, even as a dietitian, I had never seen that before. So of course I was so excited. I was like, we're on the path to universal, school meals. This is great. So how has that changed kind of the landscape of school food service?
Well, our hope is that it's changed it because there's no longer this criteria that, oh, you're poor, you have school lunch, and hey, you have money, you bring your own lunch. That we're hoping that we can erase that. Because when you think about it, a child doesn't pay to ride the school bus, they don't pay for a science experiment. Um, why are we charging, some kids for lunch and not others for lunch? And even though it is illegal for us to identify any child. So that's why there's lunch numbers and everyone pays through this lunch system, which is can be quite complex,
Yeah.
to do it so that we don't have any type of identification, even inadvertent identification. I remember back when I started 15 years ago, for a la carte sales, they had to go one side of the cafeteria where I worked, and the kids who were free and reduced could go to the other side. And I said, no, we can't have that. We can't have separate lines or anything like that.
Right.
I was really against any type of identification, avert, anything like that. So we work a lot not to have that happen, but it's still present. It's still part of the school day. It's part of the paperwork that has to come in. And when you look at all the different services that the schools provide, the only one that really gets charged is school lunch. And for some families, they're right on when I've had to deny a family by $1, I mean,
that's heart-wrenching.
Regulations are black and white, and you do have to follow them. So it's heartbreaking, the families, because it goes by gross income, and we all know, how expensive it is to raise kids.
Yeah.
Heat
Right.
home, no tires, and all the different complexities of living in Maine.
Right. So how would school districts specifically, and maybe you aren't the one to ask this, but I was always fascinated that universal schools also helps with the reimbursement that schools get for school meals. So how could that help the school budget, essentially, right?
Well, two ways. One is the formula for the funding for education is tied into that percentage of free and reduced per district. So that's part of the formula. So, for example, RSU 21 has a very low percentage of children in the free and reduced lunch program compared to Westbrook. Okay.
Right.
So Westbrook, the local entitlement pays less into the school's support. There's more funding dollars from Augusta going in per student into the Westbrook system compared to RSU 21. So that's the first way. And the second way too is local entitlement. Is my program is not part of the school budget per se. There's what's a local entitlement, meaning there's a fund, a definite pot of money that's set aside for school lunch programs, and it varies by district. But there's only about 5 programs in the state that are actually, not in the red. Most of us don't make money per se, and we do rely on the district for some contribution to our program to meet the budget.
So would universal meals help with that deficit that occurs by the end of the school year?
Well, it could help if more kids were eating. You see, the more kids, balancing a budget, there's two sides. There's the expenditures you can certainly try to control, but especially the revenues. And so my feeling is to try to increase the revenues, because then that pays the expenditures.
Right.
So the more kids that eat, the more profitable, so to speak, the program would be, and it would hopefully break even more.
I always forget that aspect of like, it's not
Mhm.
just about the number of kids enrolled, but it's about the number of meals you serve as well. And
Exactly.
getting kids to not just eat lunch, but also eat breakfast, because we know and we talk endlessly the importance of getting fuel in those bodies so that they can learn.
And especially for teenagers, I just want to put a little point out there is a lot of teenagers, we do encourage all as parents, we always encourage our kids to eat breakfast. But what we're finding with teenagers is, especially is mid-morning, there's that lull. And there's a lot of times kids don't eat breakfast because they do sleep in and they kind of, run from bed to the bus, so to speak. So we've really found that we've been pretty successful feeding mid-morning a lot of our teenagers. And that's a really important thing. And there has been legislation in the state of Maine for breakfast after the bell as well. And I think it's good practice to have
I can
breakfast.
totally vouch for that because I live with a 12 and 13-year-old who are remote 2 days a week. And those remote days, they forego breakfast with us at 7 o'clock and say, I'll eat during snack. And thankfully, they have the opportunity to, run from their room and go get a snack, so that they can, or go get breakfast essentially, that's at 8:15, 8:30, rather than eating at 6:45 or 7 o'clock in the morning. So I have to say that remote school has done wonders for their diets. Just being able to run to the kitchen real quick. But then again, they live with a dietitian. So
So they have that. Well, one thing that we've done here in Westbrook is we do remote meals to compensate for the days when the students are not with us. And we can actually feed over the weekend as well. So we provide 5 days of meals for our students that are only with us 2 days a week, and with 7 days for the ones that we don't see at all in the school buildings. So we do provide breakfast and lunch for them on those remote days. And they're easy to fix foods. We found that, especially when this pandemic struck, a lot of the families that requested meals be delivered were a significantly higher number of middle school students than any others. And we find that a lot of middle school students were home alone while the parents were working.
yep.
And so we were able really to provide a very essential service to our families, reassurance that not only were they going to get a meal in the middle of the day, but someone was checking on them too. We
Right.
know that we our driver. And so the parent knew that there was a check there and the meal was there as well. So that really helped last year during that pandemic.
I also have to put in a plug for the fact that someone else was preparing meals, because I don't know about you, but as someone who loves food as much as I do, I'm getting burnt out of cooking. And the idea that my kids are eating with the opportunity of someone else to kind of compile their meals saves me so much time, right?
Absolutely.
To
Yeah.
not have to prepare 7 to 14 meals a week, like, it seems brilliant.
Well, most of the things are very easy to fix type items.
Mhm.
Um, some of them are a pizza that they can warm up, and we provide instructions on how to do that, as well as sandwiches, um, or the sandwich they might have to assemble or
Right.
something like that. But we're hoping that we're giving them a little bit of skills to help them get by. And one major thing that we do is all of our fruits and vegetables are fresh, and they always have components of the fruits and vegetables. And we do try to use a variety of different fruits and vegetables as well to get.
That's so awesome. It's like music to my ears, and but I love talking about food. So is what would be one thing that you could take away from this pandemic experience that you would want to see continued, even after this part of our life is over?
It's going to be universal meals. I actually wrote to Walter yesterday about that, um, because one of the concerns that we had before the pandemic was unpaid school meal debt. How do
Mhm.
you collect that? A lot, it's it's very hard, difficult to collect. So there's the families that are running behind. They're busy. They have a lot of things going on, or some people don't. Even though it's supposed to be a prepaid account, they don't put money on their account ahead of time, and they wait to get a bill. But then they will pay when they get the bill.
Mhm.
Um, But in the meanwhile, I might have like $18,000 out as a program. Well, I still have to pay my grocery bills, my staff wages, all those type of things. So unpaid meal debt is a key issue of concern across the state of Maine. And universal meals really would be a, a way to solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Is there anything else you want to share with us about school meals, school nutrition?
There is actually, because I kind of alluded to it earlier about my immigrant population. That's one of the reasons I love working in the city of Westbrook, and is the wide diversity in Westbrook. And we have roughly about 20% of our families are immigrant families from other places. Specifically, I've met a lot of people from Iraq, the Iraq Middle Eastern region, and also Africa, the Sudan, Somali, lots of different cultures. And one of the things that I was concerned about was I see a lot of different kids not eating, particularly in middle school. Middle school seems to be one of the ones that the kids might skip lunch. And I know for myself, I'm a mom of 3 kids myself. My son, when he was in 7th grade, he was the last class into the cafeteria, and he wanted to go play Foursquare. So he blew off lunch, and then when he got home, it was like, all my snack foods were going like you wouldn't believe so
Yeah.
quickly because of that. So I find that, I want to find out why the kids aren't eating. And sometimes it's hard to find out, why all these kids are not eating. But I really feel that there's a large number that are just not accustomed to American type foods. And when I've kind of done some questions, some of it, well, your rice is so plain, And, I'm a Maine girl, so I know what Maine foods are like. And we really do want to kind of spice it up. But one of the things that we're kind of um, held to is our guidelines. And we do have federal guidelines that actually limit the amount of sodium in our foods. It's kind of equivalent to someone being on a 2-gram sodium diet, which is something that, when you go to the doctors, they say you have high blood pressure, you have to cut back on your salt. That's a typical type of diet that's prescribed. Okay.
Yep.
But for the general population, as Americans, most Americans are well around 4 to 5 grams of sodium a day, as you know, being a dietitian.
Yeah.
So one of the things we're doing is this week in particular, we're having a training with a professional chef on how to cook rice with flavor, with spices, without the sodium. So I was able to win a grant. No Kid Hungry is the name of the grant. It's from Share Our Strength, and it's focusing on increasing food choices, particularly for our immigrant families. But I want to have a wide array of different types of foods. But the way we're going to be doing is we're going to be targeting specifically rice to start with, and increasing the flavor and the composition of our rice, and then also our vegetables as well. And we figure that by doing this, we're also going to be increasing the options for our vegetarian students as well, as all of our students to sample different foods from around the world and increase their choices. Kids like food choices. They
Kids
want to
like
make
choices.
their own
Yeah.
choices about food.
I'm learning that.
Yep, and we want to empower them. We want to
Right.
empower them that making healthy choices
Yeah.
with their food. So it's really a great place to work in school nutrition. And I really want to encourage the legislators to continue to support us. We've been able to, in the past, pass some bills for universe to eliminate the reduced price meals, so that that 40 cents that they used to pay for lunch every day, a lot of families, that was the hardest money to collect. It really was. So that was a real win for us, and we really look forward towards universal meals for all kids in the state of Maine.
Well, Mary, this has been so informative, so delightful. I have like 1,000 other questions for you, but I will ask you another day. Just because this is so fascinating, and I think it's so pertinent. Even, as a dietitian, I know a lot about child nutrition, but the aspect of the food service in schools is such a complicated and complex problem that we need to solve as adults so that we take care of our kids.
And it really does look towards the future. Our children are our future. They really are. And we have them for 13 years in the school system. And we really do want to feed them well. And we want them to grow into be healthy adults as well. We want to be part of that.
I agree. Thank
So,
you so
thank
much.
you so much, Leslie.
Thank you for watching this video. For more information on the Maine Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, please visit our website or check us out on social media. For more information regarding the Maine Academy's public policy efforts, please feel free to reach out to our volunteers listed on the slide.